have Dr. Julie George on the No Bad Day show today. So welcome everybody who's going to be tuning in live. Make sure you ask your questions in the comments, but just so you know up front, Dr. George cannot diagnose or offer any solutions to you directly about your particular health condition, only offering general advice, and we cannot offer any suggestions on dosing or anything like that. But I want you guys to be free to ask your questions. We'll tell you whether or not we can answer them. Hey ladies, welcome to the No Bad Day show, Simple Wellness for Women. I'm so happy to have you guys here because the purpose of this show is to give you a view into the life of another woman. And she will share some of her stories, some of the triumphs she's had, and specifically Dr. Julie, how she's treating clients today and the triumphs she's had in those areas. But she's taken a hard path that not a lot of people are willing to take in the field of naturopathic medicine. And you'll learn today why that is a little bit harder of a path. But my goal as your host for this show is to bring you topics that are relevant and encouraging, because I want you guys to be inspired to be the heroes of your own story and to take the bull by the horns and go get help when you need it. And so my hope with bringing Dr. George on today is to really give you guys something to think about. And so today we're going to be talking about prevention. She's going to be talking about some immunotherapy stuff that she's hoping to get here soon into her office and how that's impacted her family and helped her daughter. We're also going to be really recapping a little bit of what Lindsay talked about last week in the No Bad Day show. Lindsay Dawkins has had Lyme disease, mold toxicities, and Dr. George just happens to be her naturopathic doctor. And we just happen to have them on back-to-back weeks. So I think it's great because anyone who watched that show may have some questions or things that Dr. George can answer. So I'm happy to have you here, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. She is the owner of River Creek Wellness in the Spokane Valley. And Dr. George is a graduate of Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine and Health Sciences in Tempe, Arizona. She is a licensed naturopathic physician in the state of Washington. But before moving to Spokane, she owned and operated Sunstone Natural Health and co-owned the Sedona Cleanse. She even received Doctor of the Year in Texas. That's so cool. Dr. George did advanced environmental medicine, postdoctoral training with the late Dr. Walter Crinan.
Walter Crinan.
Okay. And Bill Ray.
Ray. Yeah.
Not spelled how you would normally say it. But Dr. George is an active mom. She is married to another doctor of naturopathic medicine. She has 2 daughters who are 5 and 9 and a 22-year-old son. So welcome, Dr. George, to the call.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. So
yeah, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you got into naturopathic medicine and your background in that?
So as far as I went through just undergraduate thinking I was going to go into allopathic medicine, I grew up in Texas and I grew up south of Houston where the big medical centers are. I went on to college in San Antonio, Texas, and I even worked at the medical school, and I was really conventional in thought process, and just that was kind of my track was I wanted to become a dermatologist. And something stopped me in the course of going through to take my MCAT and applying for the schools. And it was just like a sensation came over me that wasn't my right path. I needed to do something else. And I found naturopathic medicine by an accident, really. And it just kind of lined up with me. And then I went and I toured Bastyr University up here in Seattle area. And then I found Southwest and I decided to go that route because it made more sense to me. I found it was trying to figure out the cause rather than slapping Band-Aids on everything. And I really wanted to make a difference in healthcare. So I just jumped in and dove head first, really. So that's kind of how I got into it. I had an experience with a naturopath, and growing up in Texas, naturopathic medicine isn't licensed. There's traditional naturopaths, which are not medically trained, and then there's a few medically trained that have moved in. And I had been diagnosed with the autoimmune condition when I was probably about 16, 17 years old. And my mom took me to the so-called witch doctor, and she was a naturopath. And I did not know anything she was talking about. Nothing made sense to me. And I followed it just a little bit, like she said, become a vegetarian for a week. And I was eating like fried okra. I mean, I was in the South, and it actually worked. And so that was kind of always in the back of my head, but I didn't know how to find it because it just wasn't anything in that conventional route. So it took a little bit of time and trust and finding the right school and the right place to go.
Yeah, and it's kind of a good thing you did, because you have two daughters, and one of them is pretty immunosuppressed, right? Or she has heightened immunity due to allergies. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about her?
So my youngest child, I always believe that some kids come to you for a teaching lesson. My youngest was born. We had a home birth. Everything was healthy, a healthy pregnancy and everything. And probably about 2 to 3 months in, she started having some reflux issues. And we couldn't really figure out why. I reduced my diet back to where I was eating, all of the so-called allergies had been eliminated from my diet. So I was eating really healthy and it was still happening. And I ended up ordering a product that is a really good immuno product. And I gave it to her, and she ended up having anaphylactic reaction to it. And that was probably about 4 months old, 5 months old. And we were sent down. It was kind of scary because we lived out in the country of Sedona, and it's a long ways to the hospital. And so we threw her in the car. We rushed as fast as we could to get to the fire station. And then they took us into the hospital. And they did not know what to do for her. They were in shock. Her white blood cell count was over 60,000. I mean, they're thinking worst case scenarios. They ended up transporting us down to Phoenix Children's Hospital. And while we were at Phoenix Children's Hospital, we were in isolation and quarantine, like we are now, for I think 8 days. We had every single specialist from every conventional specialty come in. Even speech therapy was there. I mean, for a little baby, it was crazy times. And we left without finding a diagnosis. It took a couple more months to find a diagnosis. And we found out she had eosinophilic esophagitis, as well as a blood disorder called hereditary spherocytosis. She had mutated towards the hereditary spherocytosis because my husband's family and my family does not have that. And then the eosinophilic esophagitis is more like an allergy condition in the esophagus where her throat is swelling and scarring. So in the hopes to try to figure out solutions for this, I ended up still trying to breastfeed her and nurse her, and I cut my foods down. I was only eating about 8, 9 foods at the time, trying to nurse her, trying to get her to a year old. And then she eventually became anaphylactic to my breast milk. So yeah, so she has been a major teaching lesson. She is now stable. We started doing the therapy that I want to bring in called low-dose immunotherapy. We started doing that with her when she was probably about a year old. And since doing that, we've never had to do another blood transfusion. We were doing the blood transfusions on a monthly basis when she was younger. As far as allergies, she went from being able to eat 0 foods. Like she had 0 foods. We had to do really bad food source, like kind of like a formula powder, but it's all amino acids. It's nasty. I mean, it's corn syrup derived. We had to do that for her till we got her built up, and she went from being able to eat 0 foods, and she's 5 years old, almost 6, and we're about to 22 to 24 foods. We could have more foods if allergy would test us. We have to test everything before we can give it to her. And some foods we've lost in that process. So it's kind of, for being a naturopath, it's been a hard journey because you can't just give her a vitamin. I can't give her an herbal thing because she's anaphylactic to it. I mean, it's been a challenge. So she's definitely been a huge teaching tool along the environmental sector as well.
Right. So did you get your postdoctoral work in environmental training after your daughter was born?
Oh, the interesting thing, so I grew up in Texas on the Gulf Coast, and I grew up on a couple hundred acres of farm. My parents were sod farmers. And then when my parents divorced, we ended up moving to a golf course, which is another toxic place. And we had chemical companies all around us. And then the farming and such with the spraying of the planes and pesticides and herbicides. So I always knew that environmental toxins were not so great for us, but I grew up in the area where everyone was using them, so it was the norm. When I went to medical school in my first year, I would say I was placed in Dr. Crenion's environmental class, and the light bulb went on. It was like, this makes sense. This is why everyone in my hometown is sick with something, whether it be cancer, autoimmune, or infertility. This is what's going on. So from that early stage of my education, it just became something that was important to me. And I did every single conference while I was in medical school that I could in the environmental segment, going and traveling, spending my own dollars, traveling all over the country to shadow and work with environmental doctors. And Dr. Bill Ray, he passed away last year. He was probably the grandfather of environmental medicine, and I got to go and train under him and see the worst case scenarios. And then Dr. Walter Crennion, who also passed away, he had a postgraduate training class, and I got to participate in that too. So I was, as much education as I could get, I was there sitting there and absorbing it all in, because that's where it's all at. They're stating 80% of all cancers are environmental, 75% of all autoimmune is environmental. The rest of those percentages are genetics, which now we know with the studies of epigenetics that we influence our genetics by the things we're exposed to too, or our lifestyle habits. So really those numbers of environmental significance are probably a lot higher.
That is huge. If genetics only accounts for the 20% and all the things we can do to help ourselves, and 80% is caused by environmental. When you say environmental, can you break that down for people and talk to us about what you mean by environmental? I know you have a 2-hour session with somebody when you first meet with them, and I know your list of questions, and it's like a mile long.
I do ask a lot, a lot more than most. So environmental, so we have our internal environment. So that is the way our liver is processing out the toxins that are natural to our body, like our hormones breaking down, the waste breaking down in our system. That is like having food sensitivities and the leaky gut, with that coming out into our bloodstream and causing problems throughout the body. But the external environment plays a huge role, and that is all of the building materials that are in your house or in your office. That's the electricity setups around you. We're having smart meters installed. A lot of people are becoming more and more sensitive to that. Wi-Fi, a lot of people are becoming more sensitive to Wi-Fi. Cosmetics, everything that touches our skin gets absorbed into our body. Cleaning materials. Again, everything that we spray in our house to clean is either going to be inhaled and come in, or skin contact, or some of these particulates end up in the dust of our home and they stay in our home. Dust is a huge problem. Mold is a huge problem. Pathogens, viruses, as far as like protozoas, worms, all of those kind of things actually are a problem in our modern day world. And so it's a huge scope when we're looking at it overall. And so, but every single person has some environmental compromise, because our world, we're just exposed to more than the amount that we can handle in toxics.
What would you suggest people do as far as the external environment of their home is concerned right now? What are some ways they can be proactive in helping themselves?
One, as far as like cheap, cost effective, making sure that you get a HEPA vacuum filter and you're vacuuming your house all the time and all of the surfaces in your house. And whenever you go to clean that HEPA vacuum, you're dumping the dirt outside rather than inside, not letting cleaning crews bring in their own vacuum cleaners into your house. That's really important. You don't want someone else's dust coming into your house. trying to control the air pollution in our house as much as possible, getting microfiber cloths, rather they be H2O or Norwex or some of the generic ones, using that with dish soap to clean the house, going to safer chemicals to clean with. My personal preference is 7th generations as of right now. I have Bow Building Biologist I consult with, and they're still thinking that's the safest product line available. Some people can make their own, but you have to be a scientist to figure that out, because you really have to balance the pH. And a lot of people are just dumping everything in, but we do need to make sure that that pH is balanced whenever we're cleaning. So that's probably like top things that people can start making changes with. There's other things like air filters, having a really good air filter that surpasses the common one you can just go into the store and pick up. That's important. And then as we go into remodeling or buying new furniture or replacing items, making safer choices along that way, that can make a huge impact.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you've talked to me about this before, but mattress buying, that seems to be one there. You have it for 10 plus years. So if you're going to buy one and people are in the market for one, what are your recommendations?
So mattresses, well, Jolene, you know that the reason why I'm passionate about the mattresses is my brother ended up passing away from a brain tumor after getting America's #1 mattress. And people don't realize all of the toxins that are in your traditional mattresses. There's neurotoxins in it. There's flame retardants that cause a lot of problems. There's pesticides and herbicides. There's a whole bunch of off-gassing that occurs with that traditional mattress. So when we're looking at replacing a mattress, we really want to spend the money, which in a lot of times they're equal to the price of these #1 mattresses out there. But we really want to get an organic mattress that is not sprayed with pesticides and herbicides or flame retardants. And as of right now, my favorite name brands are Lifekind, Savvy, which is SAVVY, and Organic Pedic. Those are the top 3 that I would recommend. But that is an important thing for us to look at when we're going in and replacing them, when we're having babies, when we're, giving our kids new mattresses, that they're all getting the safest quality of sleep that they can, because you should be sleeping and regenerating your body at night, and you need a good sleep.
Another thing you had mentioned to me before I thought was interesting and never thought about this was the metal framing around our mattresses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the metal frame, it's important in today's world with Wi-Fi being in place and with smart meters coming, and now all of these new technologies coming in 5G and such. We have a lot of dirty electricity in our houses. And that's a whole nother story. I'm not going to bore you guys with that detail, but it's really important that we are looking at having wood bed frames, so that we're not able to conduct electricity through those metal bed frames. And I know metal bed frames are really pretty and cute and such, but just for health purposes, we don't want to keep stimulating more and more electricity at us. So it's important to have the wood bed frames as much as possible.
Right. And I think the reason why I'm asking these questions is we spend half our lives sleeping. So
Yes.
our bedroom should be where we get good air, good quality sleep. And so, yeah, I would think that would make a big difference if we're getting those bad electricity vibes, as well as the off-gassing of our mattress. How long?
The bedroom's the most important place in our house, and it should be the cleanest place. So if we can start with the organic mattress, if we can start with having good floor sourcing in the bedroom. And I know that these are more expensive, so it's usually not a starting point for people, but as people start to remodel their houses or move into new locations and such, thinking about these things, it's really important that is a conscious awareness of, your bedroom should be the safest place. So making sure that we're not having carpet put in our bedrooms or vinyl flooring or laminate flooring, and we're really going in with tile and wood and things that are safe for us overall. And another thing too about the bedroom is some people that are still dry cleaning their clothes, they're not bringing dry clean clothes into their bedroom closet, where all of that off gases into the bedroom while you're sleeping. I'm
Wow.
getting into.
No,
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah, things we don't think about. Exactly. So, but that's my job, is to think about that for you.
Let's take a step further into what we put on our bodies. Can you talk about on our skin?
Yeah. So the average woman puts on 14 personal care products before they walk out of the home in the morning. That doesn't count all the times you stop at every restroom along the way and wash your hands, and such. So to me, it's really, really important as you go in and you start looking at your personal care products, and that's your lotions, your soaps, your shampoos, your conditioners, your makeup, that you're making better choices. You're looking for paraben free and phthalate free and lead free and just a whole bunch of frees. There is a website online, the EWG /Skin Deep. That's a really good website to compare your products. And if your product isn't listed there, they do have ingredients, so you can go and check your individualized ingredient. There's a lot of cosmetic, I don't want to like name drop, but there's a lot of cosmetic companies that are coming out that have really good, safe, clean products. But that it should be something that as you start to replace, you're phasing in with better products, because we absorb everything on that list. It creates a lot of hormone problems, a lot of infertility, and a lot of them are carcinogens, and that's not a good thing. So,
Right. For people who are hairdressers, cosmetologists, estheticians, they need to be careful. Do gloves help if they work in that profession?
Gloves do help a little bit, but a lot of it is breathing in too. A lot of those chemicals end up breaking down and getting into the dust of the place. So having good air filtration and good air filters are probably a saving grace for people in the hair and salon business. Fingernails, all of the kind of cosmetology industry is exposed more. And typically, my patients that have been cosmetologists have a lot more severe symptoms than other people that aren't exposed.
Yeah. And you say you're seeing a lot more people right now that are overly sensitive, multiple symptoms. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I see a lot of people that have a lot of sensitivities to everything from perfume to gasoline vapors, diesel vapors. They're sensitive to the lights being turned on, especially fluorescent lights. They're sensitive to musty smells, to the molds that are in almost everyone's homes. It just seems like the more we're being exposed to, and the more our foods are being exposed to pesticides and herbicides and GMOs, we're getting more and more sensitive, and a lot of people can't catch up, and they're just overwhelmed that everything's triggering them right now.
Okay. So it's really about prevention if you can. So
prevention, that was when I came into naturopathic medicine, that's what I really wanted to do, but I realized it doesn't really sell. So people like to focus once they have an issue, or once, a loved one is suffering, then they become more aware of these things. But absolutely, if you can look more at the prevention side, it's worth it. Definitely worth it to do way before a disease state starts or symptoms start.
So let's move into the body internally, into the internal environment. And as we go from outside to the skin to now internal, you talked about the liver and how it is the biggest detoxification organ of our body. Tell us about what we should be doing to maximize liver efficiency and helping our bodies detox.
Yeah, so that's really important, making sure that we're eating foods with a lot of antioxidants in them. That's important. I mean, there's a lot of antioxidant rich supplements as well, but making sure we're eating vast majority of the colors of the rainbow, making sure that we're drinking plenty of water. Green tea is excellent for helping with detoxification. Eating a lot of the brassica vegetables, so looking at your kale, your broccoli, your cauliflower, those type of vegetables are really good at detoxifying the system. So the more we can do as far as coming from food sources, the better. Again, focusing more on organic foods as much as possible and non-GMOs. And that's really hard when we travel and when we have to eat out, but as much as we can do at home in the safe food list is good. There is another list called the Dirty Dozen. I'm sure most of you guys have heard about that, but I think you need to take it a step further and try to eat as the majority of your food organic or grass-fed, free range as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. As far as just your favorite overall supplement list goes for just a general population, what's your top 5?
Vitamin D. Everyone, I've tested people in Texas, Arizona, up here, across the world, across many, many countries. Everyone seems to be deficient unless they're supplementing. Vitamin D3 needs to be supplemented with K2 for people that do not have bleeding disorders. So that's important for the majority of people. Having a good probiotic is a nice thing that most people can do, and will help your immune system and help your GI health. That's good. As far as, then it becomes a little bit more tricky depending on where we are with treating people. But in the environmental sector, I think taking antioxidants like N-acetylcysteine is important. Having a good enzyme to help with digestion of food is important. And then, as far as fish oils, they can be important for a lot of people, but I'm not a heavy take all of these supplements. I like to see what people need based off of either their genetics or based off of what we're going through with detoxification or off of some test. I don't think everyone needs to over supplement. I see a lot of people bringing in suitcases of supplements, so it needs to be more individualized. I typically have a rule of thumb that I don't like people to take more than 4 to 5 supplements. Now, when we're going through a process and, someone's being treated with Lyme or mold or some of these other conditions, sometimes we have to amp it up, but there's always an end goal, but just to keep your immune system healthy, definitely a probiotic, vitamin D, and then enzymes or NAC, something like that is optimal. And then right now, making sure we're taking lots of liposomal vitamin C. So that's important right now.
What is liposomal vitamin C?
So liposomal vitamin C is just a way that it's a delivery system to be able to absorb vitamin C a lot better, to get it up higher in the system.
So it comes in liquid form, or?
It's liquid.
Okay.
Well, I should take that back. There are some companies that make a capsule, but the ones I recommend are usually liquid.
Okay. I have that in my fridge.
It doesn't really taste good, but
it doesn't. A few drops in water and just shoot it down, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of water, I want you to talk to us a little bit about the health of our water, how we could drink healthier water. What are your suggestions in that regard?
So water seems to be contaminated all over. People are being exposed to drugs from it being in our water system. They're exposed to heavy metals and all kinds of pesticides and herbicides. So it's really important that we filter our water. That is probably number 1 on my list, is having good filtered water. Reverse osmosis seems to be the best filtration system. The problem with reverse osmosis is it does take out all of the minerals. So we have to make sure that we're supplementing in a mineral for the whole entire family if we're drinking that type of water. I like the alkaline waters. I like all of those, but first and foremost, it needs to be filtered water. And to my understanding, as of right now, reverse is still best.
Well, just this year alone, 2 cities in Spokane County and outlying areas have shut down their water supplies. So if that tells you anything, just in our area alone.
It's scary.
Yeah. I just had Culligan Water come out to the house, and they were like, "Oh, you have a reverse osmosis system." And I'm like, "Yep, I installed it." You can do it. You can install your own. You can get it for fairly $100-ish around there. Put it in, install it. But it was interesting because he wanted to sell me one, and I'm like, "Oh, I already have one. Test my water, see how good it is." And he said on a range of 0 to 80. Mm-hmm. Mine was a 5, and I was like, "Sweet!" So it's working. But
that's another important thing too with the whole water delivery systems and such, is making sure that we're not drinking out of the plastic water. That's a huge thing, that you don't know how it was stored, how it was transported, where it's coming from. And when plastic heats up, it releases plasticizers into the water. So that brings back another good point of making sure we have those systems in our house so that we're eliminating a lot of the plastic water use.
Right. And another thing too is the water filter on our refrigerator. I
Mm-hmm.
had to test it, and the parts per million, I don't know what he was actually testing, was way higher. So the reverse osmosis was working great. The refrigerator one wasn't so much. So I'm like, okay, we got to get that replaced.
Yeah. If money allows, you can put a reverse osmosis system on your whole entire house, and that's ideal because then it's filtering the shower water and the bath water and everything, but it costs a lot of money to change out those filters. So then your fridge water would be safe, but you're going through a lot of water with laundry and such, and it just, usually for most people, it's not an ideal thing with cost.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially if we're looking at changing out mattresses now and putting filters on our homes, HEPA filters and all that.
Yeah, but I always tell, like, baby steps, unless you're really sick, baby steps at a time. It doesn't, you don't have to change everything overnight. It's just becoming aware and making better decisions each and every time you go to buy something. Taking responsibility for your health and for your choices, knowing that, if you make a purchase here, what could be the implications, and then directing your energy towards making those better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about sauna use and your preferred method of that.
Yeah, so saunas are one of the best detox tools that we have available for us. I prefer a far infrared sauna. That's what we have in the office. It's a medical grade hypoallergenic sauna. It has zero wood varnishes, stains. It's not wood glued together. It's made of ceramic plates, medical grade all the way around. And so that's what I like to put people in. Whenever you go into a sauna, you need to go in a little bit above room temperature and let it slowly heat up until you get to your max temperature, which usually the max for most people should be between 105 and 115, 120 for a slight group of people. But you really want those lower temperatures for longer periods of time. And that will help your body go in and release a lot of the toxins from your fat, where the toxins store in your fat, by the way. So it'll help release the toxins from your fat and help you sweat it out so you can spare your kidneys of that damage. The difference between a gym sauna is usually 180 degrees. And so when you go in, your body's already in that stress mode, that fight or flight, like just trying to cool off so that you're not overheating.
Yeah, interesting. Good information. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about probiotics, because a question I get a lot as a health coach is, which probiotic should I take? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So probiotics are kind of tricky. It depends on what's going on with each and every person. So for example, if people have SIBO, they need certain strains of probiotics. But right now, the research is really lying on spore-based probiotics as being number one in the probiotic world. And so there's multiple companies that are making spore biotics, but in my professional opinion, I still think Megaspore is probably the best probiotic on the market with the spore-based research behind it. Now, there's other companies that are doing really well. I'm not seeing the research studies matching. And so based off of every single individual that I see, we have to make the determination of what they need. And then different people that have different things going on. Like I see a lot of patients with Crohn's disease. They might not be able to tolerate Megaspore or a spore-based probiotic up front. And so we might have to start with some of the smaller ones first. So everything has to be individualized, but that whole notion of the more, billions and trillion counts, that's not necessarily true anymore. So, but again, it depends on what we're going at and what conditions we're treating.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about genetic testing. So the 23andMe test, Ancestry.com, do you recommend those?
So in the old days, genetic testing cost a lot of money. And we had to tell our patients that these 23andMe and Ancestry tests were cheaper for them to use, and that they were cost affordable. Less than $100, you can get your methylation cycle from that. Now we have testing that are HEPA regulated. So HEPA guidelines, meaning that they're going to destroy your information. They're not going to sell it. They're protecting you. So we have some more cost effective kits coming out that are like in the $150 range. So again, it becomes to patients, do you care who has your information? Do you care what they're doing about it? So it becomes a personal decision, but we can still get what we need through a 23andMe and Ancestry.
Okay. I did 23andMe, and you had me run it through NutriHacker. Is that still a source that we can use?
So NutriHacker is still a source that can be used. I have some things I like about it and some things I don't. I don't like the encourage and avoid list on the side of it, but it's a good way of looking at our genetic profiles to see where our mutations are, if they're heterozygous or homozygous, and what the gene function is for. So it's easy to read. There are some other ones that I feel like are a little bit better when we go into more specific testing, but I mean, that one can do the same thing.
Okay. So if someone's going to work with you, is that something you want them to come in with ahead of time, as already having done some genetic testing?
It's a good idea if someone's done genetic testing. It's not something that it's not a pressing issue up front. Usually people are coming to me with a lot of symptoms. And so we start and then we work backwards to genetic testing. So again, everyone's pretty individualized, but if we have had genetic testing, then that can help us with choosing what supplements are best.
Okay. And I have a question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any recommendations for healing leaky gut?
Yeah, so definitely when we have leaky gut, we do need to do some food sensitivity testing and probably some intestinal permeability testing. So that determines how leaky the gut is, so to say, and what foods need to be eliminated.
I wanted to go into the idea of this mold toxicity and how prevalent that is, and a few things we can do. Maybe you've already mentioned that with regards to our homes, but can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so mold is everywhere. It's, outside, it's inside of our houses. It's natural to have some mold spores in our house. As far as the problem is, what has been said is about 20 to 30% of people can't handle mold. What I'm seeing is that number is a lot higher. A lot of times we'll have some water damage in our basements or water damage, in the house, and mold spores will take root and they just start going, and the mycotoxin levels become the problem. So we have testing. There's a couple different testing options, but Great Plains Laboratories is probably number one right now for testing for mycotoxins in the body. And that has been linked to a lot of different things, from fibromyalgia to interstitial cystitis to kidney stones. I mean, it's a huge problem. People aren't just typically having those allergy symptoms with mold. They're having a lot more brain fog, muscle aches, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. A lot of these neurological complaints are coming from the same things of mycotoxins being in the house. So to me, it's really important that we have those levels checked, especially if there's water damage in the house or we have finished basements or anything musty in the house. But as far as outside of testing, making sure that we're cleaning as much as possible, because mold, the mycotoxin spores are in the dust of the house. So back to the HEPA vacuum filters, back to using the microfiber cloths, not letting people bring their vacuum cleaners into your house, staying on top of the dust as much as possible is really going to cut down on a lot of the symptoms.
Okay. Thank you. And then finally, let's talk about Lyme's disease, because it seems to be a topic that you and I've talked a lot about, and you say it's so prevalent here in the world, but of course, we're only hearing about coronavirus right now and anything related to that. But I think this is such a silent epidemic that nobody really knows about. Can you talk to us?
So the Lyme disease is an interesting topic because in the United States, there's Lyme, Connecticut, and the whole East Coast, close to that area where Lyme is prevalent. And then we have the West Coast, which is like Seattle down through the West Coast, right along the coast actually, and a little bit of California where Lyme was traditionally found. But now it's a global epidemic. Our government still hasn't changed their standards on diagnosing and testing and how you actually can be diagnosed. So a lot of doctors are not educated on how Lyme can take root into a person. They're still stating that a tick has to be attached, and it has to be attached for 48 to 72 hours, that you have to have a bullseye rash, a whole bunch of things that just aren't true. What we're finding is people have no recollection of ever being bitten by a tick. They never had a bullseye rash on their body, which a bullseye rash literally looks like the target sign. They are just waking up years and years later, after maybe of being outside or in these areas and such, with horrible symptoms. The problem with every tick, now we're assuming, is that every tick is a dirty tick. So that's not only carrying Lyme disease, it's carrying the co-infectors. And these co-infectors have their own problems to them. I mean, some of them go in and change our red blood cells and cause anemia and cause heart conditions. Some cause a lot of seizures. I mean, some cause rashes and fevers. I mean, there's lots and lots of things. But with our allopathic conventional medical testing, whenever they run the blood test, one, they're not running it on anyone at all unless they've had the tick attached to them or they've had the bullseye rash. But whenever they do run it, they're just running a Western blot test. And the Western blot test in the US has to have 5 bands to be CDC positive for a Lyme patient. And it's just usually not sensitive. I know patients and friends that have been tested over and over and over again before they actually get a positive test. So it's just not the best testing. We use IGeneX, which is the #1 testing company in my opinion and my colleagues' opinion in the United States, if not the world. And it has more sensitivity behind it. And it also has the availability to test for these co-infectors. And then we're able to start treatment a lot earlier. The conventional school of thought is if you do have Lyme disease, you can just take some doxycycline for a couple of days and you're cleared of all of the symptoms. You know, it's not going to take root. But what we're finding is chronic Lyme's is actually more of a problem. People have chronic symptoms for the rest of their life, and they're constantly on that hamster wheel, so to speak, to try to overcome these symptoms. And they're horrid symptoms, from everything from can't get out of bed to can't remember to seizures to lightning bolt shocks running through their system. I mean, just really bad symptoms overall. And they're usually just helpless, and they've been diagnosed with a whole bunch of different things that aren't actually what's going on. I mean, some people even get diagnosed with things like MS. It's just, it's the great mimicker of all of the diseases, and it's really hard to find and treat. And so I don't know how it just happened to me, but for some reason, I've just received a lot of Lyme patients in the past when I lived down in Arizona. And I never really advertised for it here. People just keep coming in, and we're usually diagnosing a couple per month, and then at certain times of the year, probably a couple a week. And Lyme patients just come out of the woodworks to schedule appointments and come in. I try not to treat with antibiotics as much as possible, and I try to use more natural therapies, and people are getting results. So that's a promising thing.
Once you are diagnosed with Lyme's, is it something you can actually eradicate from the body, or will you always have it?
So that's where the conflict is at. And I'm kind of in the school of thought. I'm kind of stuck in between the school of thoughts of like, is it going to be eradicated or is it something that goes chronic and we're just going into remission? At this point, I still think like we're controlling the symptoms and we're going into remission. We're clearing it, and it's something we're going to have to battle for a lot longer. That's my personal opinion. The conventional side of thought is once you give that antibiotic for the first couple days, you're cleared for forever. We're just not seeing that. So I do have patients that have been treated and years later still don't have any symptoms. So that's a positive note. But I don't know if anyone really knows that. The way the testing is done, we're looking at IgGs and IgMs, and we don't really have something to say it's actually cleared from the body.
Okay. And it is transferable via sexually transmitted, right?
So that is where conventional school of thought and Lyme literate is a little bit different. It's never been proven. However, what we're seeing is babies are getting Lyme from Lyme moms. Partners are having Lyme. The whole families tends to get diagnosed. So we're seeing that more and more. So we just have to use our best judgment of how that's happening. But still the CDC states to this day that it's only transferable by an actual bite.
Okay. Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay had mentioned a video to watch, underskin.com.
It's a great video.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the people on there went through the conventional route though, so it's a little different than naturopathic. So, or functional medicine, it's more conventional thought process behind it, but it's a really good video to kind of see what these people are living with. And heck, I mean, a lot of people are living with it and don't even know.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Julie, how can people find you? What is the best method of getting a hold of you for an appointment?
So on our website, rivercreekwellness.com, we do have a scheduling tab where people can schedule their own appointments, see what we have available, and then calling our office directly. We'll always try to get back to the patient if we're not answering the phone right away. Right now, we're really busy with the COVID, so we're doing our best to try to get people on the schedule.
Okay.
And I try my best to leave one spot open for a new patient so that the wait list isn't weeks out. But right now, it's kind of slim. We're probably a month or so out.
Okay. Tell us about some of are you still doing or looking at doing your online trainings with the fibromyalgia groups and
well, you do so much better at this than I do. That is a goal of mine, is to really start launching these training sessions where I'm teaching people environmental medicine style of treatment plans online and course format. I have been delayed because it's been so crazy, and I keep stating like, oh, my goal is in 3 months, but guess what? I work a lot. So that is my goal, to get that going. And then future goal is to get doing some retreats and some remote locations so we can bring people in from all over the country and do more training in environmental medicine.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Train the other doctors in this area. You're the expert. So get them definitely up and up on the latest thing to be looking for. I think that's important for sure. So as we end the call, just tell us a little bit about how you take care of yourself. What is some self-care stuff that you do? You're a mom and busy working. How do you find time for yourself?
Well, that's an interesting topic. So, one thing that I learned that it took a long time for me to learn was to wake up earlier than the rest of the people in the house. If I wake up at the same time as my husband or my kids, I'm a lot grumpier. So I need about 30 minutes or 45 minutes to kind of sit and chill out and start my day. And I usually start my day by turning on YouTube and watching positive talks. And meditation. I like to do some meditation, whether it be guided meditation or meditating by myself. I think that's really important to start that off at the beginning of the day. I do a lot of earthing techniques. That's a big thing with me, especially with all of this electrical things going on, is either earthing naturally outside or earthing with mats. That's a huge thing I do. I do a lot of reading. But one thing that I love to do is take time for myself by dating myself. I think that that's a really important thing to do because most women, we're all kind of guilty of it. We kind of do our compromise on what we want to do with friends or with our spouses or compromising on movies and such. So I always, once a month, I take myself on a date. I go to eat where I want to eat. I go and watch a movie I want. I do what I want, and I do it by myself without any friends because I don't want any distractions. And I've taken it a further step as my friend. I don't have any family here, and I don't have any help with my kids. So I think it's really important that I take a vacation, rather it be just to check myself in the hotel locally and just check out from everyone by myself or to go somewhere else. And so I do that about 2 to 3 times a year, where I get at least 1 night to 2 or 3 nights by myself. And it's all about me, and I don't answer my phone. I don't do anything but what I want to do. And I think that's really important, that women kind of get down to the core of themselves and start spending time with their own self and start liking themselves. It's really hard to know what you like if you're always being influenced by everyone else around you.
Wow, that's great. Love that advice.
It's possible, and a way to make it cheaper. I was thinking about that. I was like, well, if people don't have money to escape their family, maybe make the spouse take the kids to like the in-laws for a night and you stay at your house. Like, if that was an option for me, I would love to stay in my house by myself for 24 hours, but instead I go to the hotel.
I was in Nashville not that long ago, in January actually, and I had the first 2 nights all to myself, and I'm like, it was amazing.
And well, at first it's kind of anxiety, like, what do you do? What do you do with your time? But once you start getting used to spending time with yourself, it's actually such a blessing, because you just come back so much more recharged than if you would have went with girlfriends or family or anyone. I mean, it's the best bit of advice I can give someone to get in the habit of doing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the No Bad Day show and sharing with us your knowledge of everything we talked about. This is amazing information, and get this passed over to people in YouTube and podcast format. And I hope you have an awesome day and stay sane and all of
it. You too. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on. We appreciate it.
Yes, you bet. Awesome. We'll see you later.
Okay, bye.